Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining Cowboy Conversation, hosted by the OSU Center for Health Sciences Alumni Association and OSU Foundation. I am Kinda Kadur. I'm the academic assistant for the physician assistant program. I started in April of 2021, and here we are today. So to kick off our Cowboy Conversation, we have joining us today Amy Harrison, who's the clinical assistant professor and program director for the PA program. She's a 2009 graduate from the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center, where she received a Master of Health Science as a physician assistant. Prior to that, she attended the University of Oklahoma, where she received a bachelor's degree in health science and in health and exercise science. She has worked as a primary care PA in both rural and urban Oklahoma. She also spent several years working in rheumatology, where she was able to serve patients from all corners of Oklahoma, as well as the surrounding states. She continues to provide patient care at the OSU Internal Medicine Clinic. She's from rural Southeast Oklahoma and is passionate about the program's mission to return students to rural Oklahoma. Next to her is Randy Cook, clinical assistant professor and director of didactic education for the PA program. He's a graduate of Nova Southeastern University Physician Assistant Program in Fort Myers, Florida in 2011. He has extensive experience in trauma and critical care with certification in advanced trauma life support. His experience also includes work in transplant and hepatology. Before turning to medicine, Randy was an accomplished high school science teacher and received the Sigma Psi Science Teacher of the Year Award in 2004. During his PA training, he was elected class president and was given the Chancellor's Award as the top student in his program. He was also presented with the Jiminy Award for the student who best represented leadership and integrity. And finally, we have Rebecca Stephen, clinical assistant professor and director of admissions for the physician assistant program. Becca received her Bachelor of Science degree in 2011 from the University of Oklahoma, where she majored in zoology. She then went on to the University of Oklahoma in Tulsa, where she completed the physician assistant program, earning a Master of Health Science in Physician Assistant Studies. She joined the faculty at OSU with 6 years of professional experience working as a PA in family practice here in Tulsa. Becca is active in her community, dedicates her time to volunteerism, and sits on the board of directors for a local medical nonprofit organization. So I'd like to start off the program by discussing the start of the physician assistant program. So Amy, can you tell us what a PA is and how PAs and DOs work together?
Yes, absolutely. So physician assistants are medical providers. They diagnose illness, they create a treatment plan, they prescribe medications, and even perform certain procedures. PAs work in all 50 states, and they work in every medical specialty. We are examples of that here at OSU. We work in the various OSU clinics. And are able to see patients alongside our DO partners. The partnership between PAs and DOs is really special. They, especially here at OSU, we tend to focus on the rural and underserved communities. And PAs really do that. That's really how the PA profession was born. So the history came from the Navy, actually. These Navy corpsmen, they were in an apprenticeship with a physician, and that's really where the profession was born. And then at the University of Duke, they actually created a formalized program in the late 60s. So here we are today with formalized education and a formal profession. But PAs are trained to be like-minded thinkers as physicians. We're trained to work alongside them and collaborate with them. And that's how our profession was born, and that's where we still stand today.
Well, thank you, Amy. I'd like each of you now to discuss your background and your own personal experiences as PAs. So Randy, if you'll get us started, and then you guys can each take some time to discuss your own story.
Sure, thank you. So this is actually my second career. Initially, I was a high school science teacher, as Kenda mentioned. coaching football, teaching anatomy and biology, and the flame was just kind of lit. I wanted to learn more about medicine, so went to PA school in Florida, and then when I graduated, came back to Oklahoma, got a job in liver transplant and hepatology, and then one of my very good friends who graduated from OSU from this program, from the medical school, recruited me up here to Tulsa, and that's how I got involved in trauma. Started with orthopedic surgery and then got enveloped into the trauma service, critical care. I just love dealing with, really intense moments in medicine. I like critical care. I just prefer that kind of patient. So then this program started, and it just, again, it woke up that flame. I love teaching. I think if you were to ask me, what do you do? The first thing is I'm a teacher, whether I'm teaching students or nurses or medical students, whatever. I'm a teacher first. And so when this came around, I just had to jump. So I did. So here we are.
Becca?
Thank you. So a little bit interesting related to Randy's story. Physician assistant has been my only career, and it was in fact a high school science class that led me to it. There was a career day, and they brought in different medical professionals, including one PA from the community, and that's where I fell in love with the profession. So I kind of did the study hustle. So I went from undergrad straight to PA school, and then jumped into the working world as a physician assistant. I did spend 6 years in family practice, which I loved. It gave me a huge foundation of medicine, just kind of continue to learn everything that I'd already was introduced to in PA school and kind of continue to grow as a provider. What happened was I saw OSU was starting a PA program, and the opportunity came along, and education and furthering the profession has always been a huge part of why I chose to be a physician assistant. And so I also felt like I had to jump on the opportunity to switch over from just being a provider to also being a professor and teaching with the PA program. I do also still work clinically in cardiology, which has been a very interesting new learning experience for me that I jumped at when I got here.
I guess I'm next. So I am like Becca. I went straight from undergrad into the PA program. After graduation, I actually moved home. So I'm from a small Southeast rural community. I went home and practiced there, and I loved it. It was great. Rural medicine is so fun. It's unlike what we do here in Tulsa. You take care of everyone's family, everyone's friends. They all know each other. It's just a community feel truly to be involved and provide patient care there. And then, you fall in love and you want to get married. And so my husband was here in Tulsa. He's actually a graduate of the OSU osteopathic medicine program. And so I moved up here to join him through his training. So here I am. That's how I got introduced to the OSU community and the faculty and administration that's here. They invited me to join and be a part of this program and to get in on the ground floor, just like these guys. Anytime you're able to get in on the ground floor and to actually build something new and watch it grow to fruition, there's no way I could pass that up. So I love being here. I love being at OSU. I'm also still in practice. I see patients in the internal medicine clinic. I helped start an osteoporosis clinic, so we see a lot of the osteoporosis patients throughout the OSU community. Randy didn't tell you this, but he's involved in the procedure clinic and at the internal medicine clinic, so he's still practicing as well. So we're all still getting to use our clinical skills as well as be in the classroom, which I think is probably the best of both worlds.
Oh yeah, being able to bring those clinical experiences that, hey, I saw a patient this morning, and then be able to tell the students about it, they really like that.
Well, thank you for that rich background. So let's shift the discussion to the program itself at OSU. Amy, can you tell us about the inception of the program here?
Yeah, so last night we actually had a really good reminder of a lot of the milestones that we've been through since we've been here. We had our inaugural white coat ceremony. It went really well. It was so fun and so exciting. And Dr. Stroop really reminded us of all those dates. When administration first started talking about bringing on a PA program, it was actually in 2015. So 6 years ago, this has been on their agenda and on their minds. They approached Stillwater about it, sent the formal letter indicating that they wanted to do a PA program in 2017. I came on board in 2018, which is really when Dr. Som, who's the medical director, she and I built this program, or the design of the program. We had it approved through the university in 2018. It was approved through the Oklahoma Higher Regents in the summer of 2019. And then I was able to bring these guys on board in January of 2020, where I tell you what, we spent lots of time, a significant amount of hours in a conference room filling out this accreditation application. So that part was massive. It was a massive undertaking. Let me think, where am I? I'm up to January 2020. In October of 2020, we had an accreditation site visit. We had to sit in front of our accreditation board, talk about the program, all the details. It was a really rigorous process. And then in March of 21, we officially got word that we received accreditation. So that was a big moment for us. The final step of approval is that in May of 21, we were approved by the Oklahoma Medical Board. And then on June 28th, 2021, we welcomed our first set of students on campus on day one of orientation. So we have been through lots of things. This program has been years in the making. And then up until last night with our first white coat ceremony, which was a lot of fun. I think that's the history. Did I leave anything out?
I think you covered it.
Okay.
Well.
All right. A little bit more about the program. You know, I talked about rural health, and that has come up, and it's especially meaningful to my own background, being from a small town, practicing in a small town, and it just fits well here at OSU. That's the mission of the Center for Health Sciences, and then it's also the mission of the PA program. So we want our graduates to go out and work in rural healthcare. Our vision is for them to make a really positive impact on their patients and on their communities as well. So we hope that they're models of the community. They're model citizens. They are giving back. They're serving their local communities. And then, you know, I guess a little bit more about the accreditation process, really. It took us 3 years to get to this point, and we're not done, of course. Our work is always ahead of us, but it was definitely a challenge and something that I couldn't have done without these guys. It's been a long process, but we're happy to be here.
Well, thank you, Amy. It is really exciting for us here in the PA program because we actually started 4 weeks ago. So, and we had our white coat ceremony last night. It was really exciting. Becca, can you tell us more about the admission process and how we got our first class of students?
Absolutely. Thank you. I'll note, I love hearing about the pathway we've already taken because it seems to be just going so fast, just such a ride to be on. It's so exciting. But as Amy mentioned, we were super excited 4 weeks ago to welcome our first class of students. They're great. So excited to be here and just, honored to be in the inaugural class. We saw it last night with all their families here taking their photos when they got their first white coat. But of course, how did they get here? So what we do for admissions is we do use a centralized application system called CASPA, where students from all over the country can apply to our PA program here at OSU. We have a few supplemental testings that we do as well, including the GRE and something called the Casper exam. If the student meets all those requirements, then we get their application in. It comes piling in at the end of end of September. They all come in for us to review, which is a super fun task. We love reading their personal statements and their goals about why they want to be a PA. My colleague Randy and I share an office, and we love to sit down and read personal statements together because some of the stories that you'll read are just amazing. After that, we review all the applications that come through, and then we select approximately 100 of them for interviews here in the program. Last year, we did hold virtual interviews in January of 2021. What year is it? Time flies. In January 2021, we held virtual interviews, so we were able to meet all of our prospective students then. And then we offer admission to 26. So we have 26 students in our first class that joined us here at the end of June, and they are a great representation of both Oklahoma, but also of our applicants in general. So I kind of use what I call the 70-30 rule to kind of align with what our goals were for the program. We really have kind of a 70-30% split on our admissions kind of group statistics. So we have 70% female and 30% male, 70% who identify Oklahoma as their residency and 30% who do not. We have a very strong incoming GPA and GRE score. We're very proud of our class for that. As well as we did, entertain different types of learners. As you heard Randy talk about, he describes PA as his second career. We have several students who do have a first career as maybe another type of medical provider that have then come on to be a PA. I think we have 2 paramedics, an athletic trainer, an LPN, and then several that had jobs as a medical assistant or a certified nurse assistant or possibly a phlebotomist just to get some medical experience before they came to join us. And then, of course, we do have several OSU graduates that just bleed orange and couldn't imagine going to PA school anywhere else, and we're so happy that they're here.
Thank you, Becca. I wasn't part of the, getting that, interviewing that first cohort, but it was really exciting meeting them and getting to know them during this summer. So Randy, we just completed our first summer course.
We did.
just yesterday. So can you go into detail on what that looked like and what processes we have for student success?
Sure. So last night was an interesting night because we actually got to see smiles on their faces for the first time in a while. So this summer has been pretty strenuous and stressful for them. They took an imaging course. They took immunology, microbiology, pharmacology, and lab medicine. And these are foundational courses that they will use throughout their progression while they're here. They were successful. We put in our final grades in yesterday. We have kept a close eye on them. And I think one of the beautiful things about our program is the amount of support that they get, free counseling if they need it. They're all required to meet with the Office of Academic Success. So it identifies any weaknesses, strengths that they have. And then the other great thing with only having 26 students, we get to keep a close eye on them. So if one of them's having a tough day, we can identify it pretty quickly. So even though we've been here a month, we've started to develop pretty good relationships with these students. So coming up in the fall, it's going to get a little bit more challenging. They've got a GI course, they've got anatomy, they taking all their systems courses, and these foundational courses that they took this summer will help them in all those courses. And it'll change a little bit, even though they've got what we call kind of a vertical learning objective with all these foundational courses. There's a horizontal aspect to it as well. So for example, when they go into their applied clinical medicine courses, they will learn how to do a physical exam. Next week, they're going to be learning about the abdomen, but they're also going to be in GI. So when they're learning about disease processes in GI, they'll go into the applied, into the classroom, they'll learn how to do a physical exam, and then they're bringing all that information that they learned in those foundational courses. So the bugs, the drugs, the imaging, what am I seeing here? Oh, the lab medicine is starting to make sense now. So that's just the way the program works. It's a horizontal and a vertical design. It helps to learn all those foundational stuff, and then at the same time, kind of bringing everything in as well.
Well, thank you, Randy. So let's talk about the future of the PA program. Amy, if you would like to start.
Sure. So we have a few goals. We have some very specific goals that we list on our website, of course, and some very specific metrics that we're watching. But the two that I want to highlight Again, the rural health, we really hope our students are able to make a difference in the rural healthcare system. There's a lot of communities in Oklahoma that rely on PAs as the sole healthcare provider. And we love that because they're prepared. That means they're competent clinicians. They're able to go out and practice and provide in that community where there's otherwise not a healthcare provider. We're hopeful that they're able to partner with their DO counterparts, and that's the other goal that we really are highlighting, I should say, is this idea of interprofessionalism. So the nice part about our campus is that there are lots of other healthcare programs on campus. Our students are integrated with them from day one. It's wonderful. Everybody here is very collegial. Everybody, like we've had medical students offer to mentor our students. Everybody's just, it's an all hands on deck. And we're loving it because we know that as they're training together, they're going to get out and practice together. So basically they're building this referral network now so that when they have an issue with a patient, they have someone that they can call and say, hey, I need help. Can someone help me? Who can get my patient in? And that's really our goal, is that we see that happen, especially as they move out into the rural healthcare. You're often referring into the bigger systems here in Tulsa or even in Oklahoma City. And so we love to see that happening now. They're already making friends with the med students, the athletic training students, the biomedical students. And it's just a great feel. So that's what I would say are the goals overall for the program.
Becca, what about the goals for the program in terms of admission?
Sure, thank you. I feel like the obvious answer is more applicants, but we are thankful enough to be such a sought after program that doesn't always seem to be an issue. However, I do have personal goals for admissions that are kind of in line with what Amy was just talking about. And really, I could probably capture them in about 3 different highlights. The first one is reaching prospective students. So we've already started some different measures to be able to reach out to prospective students who we think would be great applicants for the PA program here at OSU, starting with virtual information sessions and on-campus tours, as well as reaching some of the smaller universities in some of the more rural areas in Oklahoma. We've done a lot to reach out to professors and pre-health advisors on those campuses to let them know that the OSU program is here, we're accredited now, and we would love your application. My second goal comes when those applications come through. I would just always like to see the measure of the application pool basically increase within itself. So our incoming GPA, our GRE, things that we're using to kind of evaluate the admissions pool, to see them come through and to always kind of match alongside what we consider the average within the physician assistant career. And then third, I would say, and probably the most important one for me, is as we turn around and see our admissions become graduates, I'd like to close that circle and make sure that we are meeting our goals that were in the very beginning of admissions, of recruiting those students that are going to return their work to certain areas of Oklahoma that need help the most. And just to kind of, do a side touch to that, I told the students this on the first day, and they know me well by the first day they get here because I do the tours and then I also do all the admission stuff. And so they're very familiar with who I am by day one. But I also make sure they know that, there's a lot of work that can be done within your career, even if it's not necessarily your primary role. And I say that because I worked for 6 years in family practice in a very, downtown Tulsa urban clinic. But I gave a lot of my time to volunteerism. And so I like when we do our admissions, and this is coming circle for a point here. When we do our admissions, we really do try to do a holistic approach where we look at each different part of the applicant. And volunteerism is a big one as well, in hopes that we can meet that big, large goal of turning those admissions, those applicants to admissions to graduates that turn around and meet our mission in the state. So,
thank you, Becca. And Randy, what about goals for didactics?
Well, first, to get them through. It's so early, and this next semester is going to be challenging. They're taking 24 hours this next semester. So we're only through our first semester, this first month. So I think the goals at this point, other than getting them through, is just identifying what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? What changes can we make or will we need to make? And are they reaching their milestones? I think that's another thing. This first semester, it's more about recall and just kind of memorizing facts. But as they move forward, especially as we get them into the simulation department with the medical students, as those simulations with standard patients and in the simulation department, as our questions change and as they learn more and they get more knowledge behind them, can they start answering those more deep questions? Can they reach beyond just a memorization? So that's what I'm really looking forward to, is later on the simulation, I think is one of the really unique parts of our program, working with med students and just learning more. So I think that would be the biggest thing. Get them through and identify how they're doing, how they're reaching their milestones.
Thank you, Randy. I think we're all very excited to see what the future holds for the PA program here at OSU. I'd like to take this opportunity to open it up for any questions. So feel free to unmute yourself or to use the chat box.
So we have gotten quite a few questions. The first is from Magdalene. She says she has a master's degree in biomedical sciences, and she wants to know if she still has to submit her GRE score.
That seems like a good question for me with admissions. So the answer is yes. Currently, we do require the GRE regardless of the level of education you have prior to coming into the program.
Liz Jackson wants to know, will there be an expansion on the amount of students admitted in the near future?
That is a question of accreditation. The short answer is not yet. We have a couple more steps and milestones to meet for accreditation before we can start asking for expansion. So for the foreseeable future, the answer would be 26 students here on the Center for Health Sciences campus.
Also, is there data available on the average GRE scores of the initial cohort?
That's a great question. So I always like to reference what's called the Physician Assistant Education Association, the PAEA. Not only have they been instrumental in helping us become PA educators, they also publish information statistically for PA students across the country. And I like that information because students normally aren't just applying to one program. So I always reference that to say that on average, they report that the GRE on each section is about 150 to 151. And so that's the average I like to give to students. The OSU average was slightly higher than that, but again, we're a holistic approach, so we do look at each part of your application and not just the one score.
Are there any science prerequisites that are required or beneficial?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So we do have several prerequisite requirements for our program. We do require a grade of B or above on these classes, and I can list them off. They are listed on our website, but they include physiology, anatomy, microbiology, chemistry, 2 semesters, and then 2 psychology courses.
We do, I'm going to piggyback off that and tell you, we do ask for upper division electives. And I think these guys would agree with me. After hearing from the students this first summer, they would recommend immunology as one of those electives because it is part of one of the courses this summer. And the students that had taken it as one of their electives, you know, of course they all did well, but I think they were less surprised, maybe is what we should say.
How do PAs practice rurally without the presence of an MD? It's Melanie's understanding that they practice under an MD's license.
Okay, so that's a great question. So in fact, our legislation just changed. So PAs, first off, have their own license. So we each have our own individual license number. We have our own NPI number, which is our prescriptive number. We each have our own DEA numbers, which is controlled substance licenses. So we have all of those things that are individual to us. The state of Oklahoma and the legislation changed to say that we work alongside a collaborating physician, meaning, yes, we work alongside physicians, and yes, formally there is a relationship, a legal agreement basically with the Oklahoma Medical Board, but it's less of a, it's more of a practice-specific relationship, meaning It depends on what your practice looks like. So in an urban setting, like when I worked in rheumatology, I worked right alongside my physician. Every day we shared the same patient panel. They saw the physician one time, they saw me one time, they sort of went back and forth. Versus in rural healthcare, as the only PA, you still have a physician that's on call, that maybe they're asked to come in and see patients certain number of days a week. Maybe they're on call just for difficult questions or a case review through the chart. But it varies based on the practice. Where Randy's practicing, and I should probably let him speak more, he's in the hospital with physicians. So he has a very different relationship than what Becca and I have experienced in the outpatient world.
And it's a great relationship. Having that sounding board and having someone that you can call when you have difficult questions, we love this relationship that we have with our physician counterparts.
We do, and I'll add just one thing in reference to that specific question. When we do apply for our license, we do have to list a supervising physician. So you do have to have that collaboration already planned for the job you're going to take before you get your medical license, and then every time you renew it. And that can be with an MD or a DO.
And it looks like our last question is from Liz. She wants to know, while in the program, are there opportunities for volunteering within the program in rural settings?
They're looking at me. So yes, in fact, with our mission of with the mission of the institution and with the mission of the PA program, we felt it was very important to start instilling that type of opportunity in the students as early as we can. So we have a course called Developing the Physician Assistant, and then it starts in the fall and it runs for the rest of the curriculum. And so the first semester, we in fact have built in service learning opportunities, both at local medical clinics, and then also at charitable institutions within Tulsa to be able to go and volunteer. So there is a requirement to do a few hours as a student. And then my hope would be that you find somewhere that engages you enough that you might want to, that the student might want to go back on their own time. That way also, if you're not from the Tulsa area, we can also introduce you to some opportunities and what the culture is like in the whole city.
Okay, and it looks like we have a couple of more questions. If you applied this year and are awarded the opportunity to interview, when would you expect to have an invitation for the interview?
That is a great question. So our admissions are not rolling. They're we call them one-timers. And so our application closes at the end of September, at which time we review all applicants, and first rounds of decisions are typically made early to mid-November. So I always tell students, by Thanksgiving, you'll know where your application stands.
Are there financial aid opportunities? I understand that while in the PA programs, you're not allowed to work due to long hours and heavy course loads.
Yes, of course, financial aid is available. You are allowed to work. We just don't recommend it. It's difficult to keep up with that load. The students, they were in 4 hours in 1 month. So 4 courses, 1 hour apiece. I mean, their work was either here or going home and studying. So it's just hard. If you work outside of your educational program, the fear is that you're going to fall behind. And so we just don't recommend it.
How do PAs operate differently from nurse practitioners who also hold individual practice licenses?
You're looking at me again. Okay. That's a great question. We get that all the time. It really starts at the education. So there are 270 PA programs in America. There's one accrediting body. So we all follow the same rules. We have all the same guidelines, and we have to meet all of those metrics to maintain our accreditation. We are trained in the physician mindset. So we are trained to be like-minded thinkers in the way we diagnose our patients and the way we treat our patients. That's, again, I tell you, it starts from day one. Back in the 60s when those Navy corpsmen, they were trained to be like that physician. The nurse practitioners have a little bit different educational pathway. It depends on the various certifications. They have different certifying bodies. They can specialize and get specialty licenses, whereas we're trained to be general practitioners. Working day in and day out, I've worked with a lot of nurse practitioners. I've loved that experience. It's been great. I think if you came to the urgent care and you saw me for a sore throat and you saw a nurse practitioner for a sore throat, likely you'd have a very similar experience. So maybe in the day-to-day, there's not a whole lot of, for the patients, there may not be wide differences, but as far as training goes, it's very different.
And I would piggyback just to mention, they do specialize, but we can specialize as well. Even though we are trained as generalists, my experience, orthopedic surgery, hepatology and transplant, critical care. So we don't have to get individual licensed to do these specialized training, but we do specialize as they do as well.
And even just to jump on that, just piggyback off the piggyback, the difference is, when you're trained in generalized medicine, as Randy just said, he switched his specialty a few times. I worked in family practice. Now I work in cardiology. The way the nurse practitioners are trained on the nursing model, they do have to select what population they're going to care for, and then there isn't as much wiggle room across as there are if you're a PA.
All right. Well, I think that's it. That was a lot of very interesting questions. So Amy, Rebecca, and Randy, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us today. And we appreciate everyone for joining us and hope you can join us for future events.
Thank you, Kenda.
Thank you, and thank for everybody who joined us today.